Hey guys, 4030 Gaming here, and today I want to talk about the new DLC that just came out for Kingdom Rush Vengeance. It's called Pirate Kings, and since my Kingdom Rush Alliance review video was so well received, I wanted to do a review of it as well. As I'm sure a lot of you are probably wondering, is it worth buying a new DLC for the previous game? Well, I'll give you my take to hopefully help you make an informed decision. As I did with my Alliance video, I want to say a special thanks to Ironhide. Again, they provided me with early access to the DLC, which is why I'm able to bring you this content on release day. I've only had access for about a week, but that's been enough time for me to beat the campaign on Impossible, as well as try out both the new hero and the new tower. I haven't gotten through the heroic and iron modes yet, but I'm working on them. I will be adding this DLC to my Impossible Hero Challenge series for Vengeance, and I'll try to get that started as soon as possible. But Ironhide is absolutely killing me right now, as I'm still trying to get my Alliance Impossible Hero Challenge done before new content drops for it in October. And of course I'll eventually add the new hero Lucerna to my Impossible Hero Challenge series as well, but replaying the entire game with her is going to have to wait for now. I was under the impression that this DLC wasn't going to come out until closer to the end of the year, so now I am in a major content crunch. Alright, so let's talk about the DLC. Now I will admit up front that I wasn't exactly excited when this DLC was announced. I was also a bit confused. After all, Vengeance was done, Alliance was just about to come out, so why would Ironhide spend the time on a new DLC for an old game? I also wasn't particularly thrilled because, well, Vengeance. Don't get me wrong, I'm not a Vengeance hater. I like the game, but it had its moment in the sun, and I was ready to move on. Besides, Vengeance already has plenty of content. It has 36 maps already, for crying out loud, far more than any other game in the series. We got the Frog campaign, the Ice Witch campaign, the Rotten Forest campaign, the Asian Dragon campaign, the Dinosaur campaign, all of which had 3 maps, and then we got the Hammerhold DLC with 5 more. I found myself wishing Ironhide were devoting these resources into something else instead. Like, maybe an update for Legends of Kingdom Rush. Hint hint, Ironhide. Now, I liked the Hammerhold DLC, but it didn't exactly rock my world either, so my expectations for Pirate Kings were kinda middle of the road. Well, I am glad to say that I was fantastically wrong, because this DLC is absolutely amazing. From the moment I started playing, I was like Neo in the Matrix going, whoa. So let's dive into what makes this thing so good. Just like Hammerhold, this DLC consists of 5 new levels, a new hero, and a new tower. Let's start with the levels first. Now we all know that Vengeance has historically had problems with pacing and difficulty. In general, the levels move just a little too slow, and generally speaking the game isn't all that difficult. I feel like Ironhide has maybe gotten a little salty about this feedback from the community based on their recent releases. You may remember that Ironhide sold Hammerhold, literally, as having a high difficulty level, and it even has that disclaimer on the map screens. I do feel they delivered on that promise. The Hammerhold levels were generally a cut above other Vengeance levels in difficulty, and the grades I handed out in my Impossible Hero Challenge series bear that out. Well, that same disclaimer is back for Pirate Kings, but they definitely took the difficulty and cranked it up yet another notch. Or 2. Or 3. And not only is it more difficult, the pace is much quicker too. For all 5 levels, I felt like enemies were just constantly flying at me, not giving me a moment's rest, and I was always on the back foot trying to keep up with them. It's fantastic, and I wish Vengeance had been like this from the very beginning. If it had been, I have no doubt that the community would rate it as the best game of the whole franchise, even if you didn't like that tower selection mechanic it introduced. So yeah, playing the levels is super fun and challenging. I'm not afraid to admit that on a couple of the levels, it took me quite a bit of work to find a no lives lost solution for impossible difficulty. I'll confess that I'm kinda dreading doing this for my Impossible Hero Challenge series. I managed with a lot of effort to do a no lives lost walkthrough of the campaign modes on Impossible with Varuk, which is the footage you've been watching, but I'm worried about doing this with other weak heroes like Azra and Olak. Hashtag Olak is garbage. There's a boss fight at the end of each level, and I don't feel this is a spoiler as I think Ironhide made the boss fights pretty clear in the announcement and trailer. All of them are very challenging and satisfying. As for the last level, I'm not going to spoil anything for you, but it's awesome. All I'll say is that when you start the level, you immediately have this thought of, am I going to have to... And the answer is yeah. Yeah, you do. Again, I'm not afraid to admit that it took me several tries before I beat it the first time, and that was using the new hero Lucerna, who's pretty powerful. So all in all, there's a massive sense of accomplishment in completing the campaign, and Ironhide has just done a phenomenal job with these levels. Speaking of the new hero, let's talk about her. We get the Dark Pirate Queen Lucerna, and she's pretty awesome. I mean, she flies a pirate ghost ship, what more do you want? Now, my initial impression of her is that she's not as powerful as the three top dragons, Icecalt, Merglin, and Dianyan, but when I go back and add her to my Impossible Hero Challenge series, I'm fully expecting her to compete for maybe the 4th or 5th spot overall. She has a very well-designed kit combining several useful and powerful abilities. Her first ability, Scurvy Visage, is an AoE fear that also damages enemies. She has another ability called Damned Crew that summons 2 blockers, and these 2 abilities really help her hold the line, even though she can't block since she's a flying hero, so they really shore up her one weakness. Fire All Guns is a straight-up large area AoE attack, and Pirate's Pillage gives her a 40% chance to gain 3 gold on every basic attack. You might be thinking that this all sounds very familiar, and yes, she's very similar to Barrisad. Both of them have a fear ability, a summons ability, an AoE ability, and a gold generation ability, and of course they can both fly. This is why I say I'm expecting her to compete for the 5th spot overall, which is where Barrisad is currently ranked. Now her basic attack, unlike his, does magic damage, which along with Isfet before her helps bring the number of magic damage heroes more in line with the number of physical damage heroes. And finally, her passive ability is that she teleports when moving long distances, and teleporting is one of the most useful abilities a hero can have. Her hero spell is especially awesome. Cursed Colors places a totem on the path that starts spewing out possession bolts at a rate of about 1 per second. They work just like the possession ability on the Spectral Mausoleum. So yeah, if a lane is getting out of hand, just drop this down and it will immediately turn the tide. Possession already makes the Spectral Mausoleum the best magic tower in the game, besides the Blazing Gem, of course, so you can imagine what a mass version of the ability can do. The one downside is that this means her hero spell can't contribute anything against bosses and mini-bosses, other than trying to turn regular mobs against them. But, at the risk of minor spoilers, 2 of the bosses in this DLC can't be blocked, and another has an insta-kill basic attack that also heals himself, as does the mini-boss you face in one of the levels. So yeah, her hero spell is pretty much useless for the boss fights. Still, she's an amazing hero and fun to use, so I'm not dreading replaying all 36 previous maps with her for my Impossible Hero Challenge series quite as much as I normally might. Finally, we have the new tower added by the DLC, the Ogre Shipwreck. This is definitely unlike any tower we've had before in any Kingdom Rush game, as it's kind of a kitchen sink hybrid tower. At level 1 it's just a barracks, and you get 1 Ogre blocker. That doesn't sound like much, but he has a lot of health and is an excellent tank, as well as hits like a truck. At level 2 you get a second blocker in the form of a Goblin. He doesn't have anywhere near as much health, but he has a very fast attack. At level 3 the tower gains a ranged physical attack, and at level 4 it gains an artillery attack with a very large attack radius. So yeah, it combines a melee, ranged, and artillery tower all in one. As for the special abilities, one gives the blockers more damage and armor, while another causes the AoE attack to periodically spawn another Goblin blocker. The money skill, though, is Musket Rage, where the tower does a rapid-fire attack. Fully upgraded, it does, I believe, 16 attacks for 29 damage each, or 464 total damage on a 15-second cooldown, which equates to about 31 DPS. Overall, it's a big addition to the tower's damage output, and I relied on it a lot in my walkthrough videos. It reminds me a lot of the barrage ability of the crossbow fort in Frontiers. So how powerful is the tower overall? Well, it's not an OP tower by any means like the Blazing Gem or Swamp Thing, but it is fun and useful. I think the best way I can describe it is situational. It's not optimal for every circumstance, but when it works really well. In fact, there was one level, and I won't give away which one, where I really struggled with getting a no lives lost win on Impossible. I tried all the tricks. Normal straight-up choke point strategies weren't working, possession spam wasn't working, skeleton warrior spam wasn't working, nothing was working. It turns out that the optimal build strategy was just to spam Ogre Shipwrecks with the Musket Rage ability. You can check out my walkthrough videos, which I also published today, if you want to see which one it was. So overall, this is absolutely A+ work from Ironhide. I cannot recommend this DLC highly enough. It gives me a lot of hope for the future of what Ironhide will put out. If you watched my Kingdom Rush Alliance review video, you know I gave it a very favorable review. However, since then, I'll admit that my enthusiasm has cooled off a little. I've been working on my Impossible Hero Challenge series for it, and as I've gotten more experience playing on Impossible, and especially playing the Heroic and Iron modes, I've begun to see some of its flaws a little more clearly. I still think it's a great game, but it has made me wonder about the quality of future content. Well, if this new DLC is any indication, then Ironhide is absolutely on the right track design-wise, and it's gotten me excited for the new content that will be coming out next month. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to get back to trying to finish all the videos I'm currently working on before that content drops, and I get even more swamped. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you around.